Hey, what's going on? 12-2 Nation, Coach Joe here, and we are back with the second group call of the month. And this is where we like to have on another athlete to talk about their experiences, to answer some questions on some of the things that you may be walking through yourself. Maybe they're things that you have gone through before, or maybe they're things that, hey, maybe you haven't gone through yet, but just some knowledge on these topics or some things that are going to get you through that season of life when you when you cross that road. And so I just want to invite Ella Fitzpatrick on from she just transferred in. Now she's at oh gosh, Northwest or Missouri Western
There you go,
University.
yep.
Tongue twister. But just want to invite her on tonight and just share a little bit, like I said, about her experience, how she ended up where she's at today, her athletic experience, her journey there, and a little bit of just everything in between, adversity, her story, and I really just want to give her the floor, and then we're gonna have a couple questions for her to answer at the end. But Ella, you want to take it away?
Yeah, well, hi guys. Like Joe said, I'm Ella Fitzpatrick. I am a softball player, and I have definitely had quite the journey throughout my athletic experience. A lot of changes, a lot of moves, a lot of injuries I've run into. I originally grew up in Omaha, Nebraska, and up until my sophomore year, I lived there. I went to Omaha Burke, and I went to Burke during the height of COVID, and that's when OPS kind of shut down and everything. And for some family reasons, athletic reasons, academic reasons, we decided to make the move back to Sioux City, where a lot of my family is from. And that was so middle of my high school experience. That was a change in itself. Kind of, you're not used to that change. You're used to that change when you go off to college. Not really in the middle of high school, so that was a learning curve for me as well. And I got up to Sioux City, and not it was 2, 3, yeah, maybe 3 months after I'd moved during my junior year. I ended up tearing my ACL in a basketball game. And for a lot of you athletes that you know, your junior year is like your prime time recruiting experience. And I was wanting to go on and play college softball. And so that was really just like a whoa, okay. I blew out my knee completely. And like I said, I was in the middle of recruiting. I had already been contacted by some schools. I was dead set, like I was going to go play in college. And then this happened. And so my surgeon came around. He was like, you know what, kid? Like, you just tore your ACL, like there's no other damage. If you want to go and play this summer, you can. And so, me being the competitor that I was in high school, I decided to go on and play. And in the process of that, I ended up completely tearing my meniscus as well. And so that was kind of the risk I knew going into playing on my ACL torn, but I was convinced that it wasn't going to happen until it did. And so, end of my junior year summer, right before my senior year started, I had a full ACL reconstruction and a meniscus repair that put me back about 9 months. And so, right before my senior year started, or my senior year softball season started, I was finally able to play. And before my senior year started, I ended up committing to Iowa Western down in Council Bluffs, and I was super excited. I was like, I've heard so many good things about the JUCO route, which to all the athletes out there that are listening, like I could not recommend that 100%. If you have a chance to go JUCO, go. You learn so much about yourself, you meet some of the best people, and it's just all around great athletics. And so I was super excited to go into Iowa Western. And then about a month before we moved in, we get a text from our head coach saying, hey, I ended up taking another job. I'm leaving. And then our assistant coach ended up leaving. So I was walking into Iowa Western with a brand new coaching staff, still kind of recovering from my knee because I was only a year out from surgery. And so I get down to Iowa Western and I was faced with like, the change of going to college for the first time, a brand new coaching staff. I'd never met my roommates before. And so it was just a lot of change. And to be honest, I hated my first semester. I hated it so much. I was ready to leave. Like I wanted to be done. And then I was like, you know what? Nope, we're going to stick it out. And I ended up sticking it out for both of my years at Iowa Western. And I absolutely loved it. Like I said, if you can go JUCO, go. It's one of the best experiences you'll have. But I ended up leaving Iowa Western not committed, which is very scary and very nerve-wracking for a lot of kids, especially when you see a lot of these kids at Iowa Western. You've got some of the best athletes there that have been committed for months on end, and you're leaving there with you're like, oh crap, I got nowhere to go. And so I ended up going to a transfer portal camp out in Colorado at the beginning of July and ended up committing to Lipscomb University down in Nashville, Tennessee, and that was at the end of July. So I had a 2 week turnaround from the time I committed to the time I moved 12 hours from home. Granted, I had never gone that far from home, and again, change was scary. That was a very big jump for me. And so I got down there, and in about 3 weeks after I got down there, I was shut down because of an arm injury. And by the time I was down in Nashville, that 4 month span, I ended up going to 15 different doctor's appointments, and all of these doctors were still like, we don't really know what's going on with you. Like my arm would go numb, it would swell. I did all the MRIs. There was no UCL tear, there was no labrum tear, and they were just like, we don't know what's going on with you. And throughout that time, I was just miserable. I hadn't been away from home like that. I was hurt. And so at the semester, I decided to make the jump to come play back closer to home after visiting a couple doctors back home where they're like, you know what? It's not going to do any more damage. You can play if you want to. It's just going to be a pain management. So I was like, you know what? We're going to give it one more go. And so I ended up committing to Missouri Western, and I'm waiting to move in tomorrow to go finish out my junior year down there. So yeah, that's kind of my condensed version of my kind of wild ride and crazy story that I've had over the last few years.
Yeah, wow. Wow. First off, I mean, it's crazy that I mean, you're here right now, like said you're gonna move in tomorrow to play at Missouri Western and just from adversity after trial after trial after hurdle, it's like you just keep getting up and you keep getting up and you keep going back and you keep going back and talk about just resilience and it's hard to come back after like one knee injury and then you come back and it's like a meniscus and that's two knee injuries and then it's an elbow injury and then it's just everything in between with and then to add on COVID. And so I just think a common theme that I just hear in your story is just adversity and bounce back. And I know I didn't send you this question beforehand, but can you touch on like how that adversity has like shaped you and I almost think prepared you for hey, what you're gonna walk into at Missouri Western? Like, do you feel like you're almost just ready to like conquer any battle that comes your way?
Yeah, like, it's funny, I've kind of had this running joke with anyone I tell this story to, like, between my friends, my family, I'm like, "Alright, what's next? Like, what's coming next?" Like, I'm so like, I've just kinda gotten used to, like, okay, you're not comfortable when you're an athlete because there's always something that's gonna be around the corner, and that's honestly what kinda makes it fun, and something my dad's always told me, which I don't listen to him all that often, but he tells me day in and day out, he's like, "It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it."
Mm.
And there's definitely been times I haven't handled it well and haven't reacted well, but on the flip side, on the times that I have reacted well and just been like, "You know what? It's another thing. We're gonna get back up. We're gonna go again." Like knowing that you have the strength to get back up and keep going after something comes your way is just something that's really kept me going throughout the years. It's like it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And I think the athlete that you are, the athlete that you're going to be stepping into Missouri Western is is part of everything that you've been through up to that point. It's like you would not be the person off the field or the player on the field if you didn't go through all of those circumstances, good, bad, ugly, twist, turn, up, down, all of it like helped shape you to get to where you are today. And so I think people want to get to the end, like, hey, I want to go play baseball at this school or softball at this school or basketball at this school. But it's, hey, your story is a perfect example of, hey, sometimes it's a battle to get there. Like it's not easy. Like it's a grind. It's day in. It's bouncing back from adversity. It's, hey, when you get knocked down, like I need to get back up. And I love what your dad said about reacting. Like it's not about what happens, but it's about your response to it. And I think we talk about so much here of, hey, it's we want to respond in a manner of hey, like attacking the adversity head on. We don't want to react in like be a victim to it, but it's like how do we have that growth mindset in the process of, hey, I need to respond to this. Like I need to attack it head on. And I think you're just such a good example of that. And so I'm glad we got an audience here to hear your story because I think so many people can relate to it. Just with the injuries and the constantly getting knocked down because that's life. Life's hard. And so we got to
Yep,
learn
100%.
how to bounce back. And so I had a handful of other questions that kind of relate to your story a little bit, just with adversity, with obstacles, like learning new ways to bounce back. And so with the first one was what mindset shifts are necessary to see adversity as an opportunity rather than an obstacle?
This is something that I wish I knew when I was going through my knee injury back when I was in high school. Like, injuries are and obstacles and things like that. It's a chance to like take a step back and slow down. And that's a blessing in disguise for a lot of people, especially someone like me where I was always go, 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 what's next? Like I never slowed down ever. Like you never saw that out of me at Iowa Western. And so it's a time to kind of like slow down and take time for yourself mentally and decide, okay, what path do I want to take after this? Like, do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? And what do each of those paths look like? And it's an opportunity to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, what does this sport really mean to me? And that was something with both injuries that I've gone through. It's like I've taken a step back and I'm like, man, this sport has given me more than I could ever give it. And so it was just, it's a time for you to reflect of like, okay, this sport does mean a lot to me. And all right, how am I going to get back to this? And I know this is a cliche saying, but um, oh, what happened? Hold on. Sorry, my computer just completely like but yeah, it's cliche, but just that saying of, it's a minor setback, it's a major comeback. It's one of those things that was something that I hated like telling people that was my mindset when I was hurt, but truly was that. It's a chance for you to like, okay, people aren't going to see me on the field for how long. When I come back, I'm going to be even better than I was just because I knew that I had taken that time off mentally to recover and let my body recover. And it was a time for me to just get stronger in more ways than I thought I needed.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And I think I love how you said it was a cliche because I say this all the time, but some of those cliches are cliches because they're true.
Oh yeah,
And so it's
100%.
letting it, hey, it's a minor setback. Like at the end of the day, it's you you can't control those things. Like you can't control the injuries. You can't control the storms that hit or the hurdles or the walls that you run into. But again, it kind of goes back to your response. Like you can control the response and how you bounce back and how you look at it and how you view it. And so I always say there's like 3 controllables that you can control: your attitude and your effort and your focus. And so if you just control those 3 things, the minor setback, like you said, will eventually accumulate to a major comeback. And so that's cool that you even mentioned at the beginning too. Is that something you wish you would have known from the beginning? And so now it's like, great, like you have this platform, like you've been through all these things. Now you can share it to the
Mhm.
athletes who are going before you because I'm the same way. Like I wish I would have known that before I had all my injuries and before I had all
Yep.
my setbacks.
Yep. Yeah, no, 18-year-old me was not convinced that the minor setback, major comeback thing was true until I went through the recovery myself and I was like, that's a lot truer than a lot of people realize. And so that was something that I wish I bought into a little bit more when I was going through my knee, but it was something I definitely bought into when I was dealing with this arm injury of like kind of deciding again what path I wanted to take, whether I wanted to go left or if I was going to go right, and if I was going to go right and continue to play after which I chose to do, I'm gonna come back stronger than I was. And so that's something I've really bought into within the last few months.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's sweet. Well, with that, kind of staying along that topic of adversity, injury, how you bounce back, how you respond instead of, hey, letting the injury or the circumstance control you, how do you avoid letting the adversity define you? Like you
It
talk
was one
about,
of those things where it was like I knew that it wasn't going to last forever. And so I had a choice to make of how I was going to come out on the other side. It really found me to it allowed me to find my strengths off the field versus on the field because again, when I was at Iowa Western, I struggled pretty bad mentally. Like my mental game wasn't great, but on the field, I was great. I worked really hard. Like I knew what my strengths were on the field. Off the field, I didn't really know that. And so that just this adversity kind of allows you to again take a step back and work on the things that people don't see on the field. And that was something that kind of allowed me to understand that what I'm going through, it doesn't define me because people don't see what's going on behind closed doors.
yeah, yeah, totally. I think there's so much more to I almost think of like the process. Like it's not just what people see. Like there's hours of time with teammates, hours of practices, hours of film, hours of just preparation that go into it. And people only see like the big things, like the big injuries. But we're like, hey,
Mhm.
what's put out in the media or what's put out on by the coaches or your teammate. And so I think that's such a good mindset to have is you're more than just the big moments. It's like, hey, behind closed doors, what people don't see, like you're still Ella. Like you're Ella that gets to interact with her team. You're Ella that gets to show up to team practices and meetings and everything in between, even when you're injured or sidelined or things like that. And so I think understanding truly, I think it comes back to like identity, like understanding like who you are beyond softball or who you are
Mhm.
beyond basketball or football or whatever sport it may be. And so, yeah, I think that's so good because the second you let the adversity define you, I think that's when you start to see like almost a full like getting like fold up and just like
Mhm.
letting it almost consume you and then it's a spiral. And so
Mhm.
um, love that there. And so I brought up like the process. And so is there any tools or strategies or mentors that kind of help you to stay process oriented? It's something we talk about so much at NJ, just with not getting caught up in the results or the accolades or the score sheet or the final score. How do you stay kind of bought into the process?
I was very big on my routines on game day because I knew, like, I found my routine. I knew it was going to work for me. I was going to stick to that because it kept me comfortable. Like, I loved the process before games of sticking to what I knew because it wasn't going to get me too high. It wasn't going to get me too low. And I had a coach at Iowa West. Her name was Coach Al. And she told me countless times when I'm going to her, I'm like, Coach Al, all these other girls from other schools are committing. Like, all of my teammates are getting phone calls from all these other coaches like I'm not getting anything, like what am I doing wrong, like why am I not, and I would just get myself so freaked out on why those big picture things weren't happening for me. She told me every time I came to her with about this stuff, she's like, you got to be where your feet are, and that's something that has stuck with me ever since she said it. It's one of my favorite phrases. And I just have taken it to like if you can't enjoy where you're at now, you're not going to enjoy where you're going to be 10 steps down this process. If you can't enjoy step 1, you're not gonna enjoy step 10. So being where your feet are, like that is just something that has hit so close to home for me, and that has really helped me enjoy like the little things and the process to get to that big picture moment.
Yeah, that's so good. That's so good. And I smile like ear to ear, like as you're saying that, like in my head too, of that's something we tell and talk about all the time. All the time. It's, hey, people often think the grass is so much greener on the other side, but it's greener where your feet are. It's greener where you water it. And so I think that's a common theme. Like we've had multiple athletes come on here and talk about we've had athletes from GCU and Loyola and UNO and Oklahoma State and Lincoln and almost every single one of them has said what you just said. And I think that like speaks volumes to, hey, if you want to be an elite athlete, you need to focus on the process and being where your feet are and not worrying so much about the other athlete or the win on the other side of the the week or the month or the season. You can't focus on the accolades because a lot of times those are outside of your control, where it's just focus on what you can control, your attitude, your effort, your focus, and being where your feet are.
Yep.
And so I think it's super encouraging for me to hear, but also like for every athlete, as that's a common theme is, hey, we need to learn to be where our feet are. And I love that it was a coach too, a coach that would say that. And I think that kind of goes in to kind of my last main question is, do you have any specific like family members, coaches, friends who kind of have impacted you along the journey, like in all those ways that come to mind right away?
My family's a big one. I was so when I was looking at schools after Iowa Western, I was like, you know what? I stayed close to home for 2 years. Like for my last two, like I can go far, I can be fine. And man, oh man, was I wrong. I kind of realized that it's not worth it to me to go through this journey if my family, my friends aren't going to be there to experience it with me. Like for me, it didn't feel right for me to be 12 hours from home and playing softball when I can't walk out of the field after the game and see my parents there. Like it just didn't feel right for me just because I've grown up. My dad was my coach growing up. So not having him around for those last 2 years or it just didn't feel worth it to me. Again, like I said, if it I can't share this experience with the people that got me here, like it wasn't worth it for me. So my dad was definitely a big one. My family's a big one. Um, I wouldn't be where I am without them. They've heard everything in between, the good days, the bad days, anything you can imagine. So they've definitely been my biggest support system throughout this entire journey.
Yeah, that's huge. That's massive. And I think that speaks like volumes to it doesn't have to necessarily be family, but it can be family, friends, teammates. You talked about a coach that met you where you're at, that you went to almost every single time that you were feeling specific feelings or going through specific things. And I think that just shows the importance of finding your people. Like being having people around you, having people in your corner who you're going to celebrate the wins with, that you're going to go to when you need somebody to talk about the losses with. And when you don't have those people, it's harder to get through those moments. Like I
Amen.
think back to just your all the adversity you faced, the knee injuries, the elbow, the moving, the transferring, like all of it, everything in between. If it wasn't for your family, if it wasn't for those closest to you in your corner, I guarantee you it probably would have been a lot harder to walk through those moments.
Oh,
And so I
without a
think
doubt.
it's finding those people is just so important. And so man, I wish we had all the time in the world. I think you
Yeah.
probably from your experience, from your everything that you've been through, the highs, lows, the ups, downs, the transfer portal. I mean, all of it. I think you have so much life experiences, you have so much wisdom to give, and what an encouragement it was for me, and then for everybody listening, I'm sure. And so, thank you. And then I have one more question that we ask everybody for everybody that comes on just at the end is what is one piece of advice that you would leave just anybody who's watching and for athletics, for life, um, for any of it? I just want to open the floor to you.
I would say enjoy the lows as much as you enjoy the highs. Kind of after talking about my story, kind of telling people I wouldn't be where I'm at without the lows. So I've learned to enjoy the lows just as much as the highs because they shape you into the person, player, anything you want to be. You're not going to be that person without the lows as much as you are without the highs. So enjoy the lows, enjoy the highs because it really does like it makes life fun, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, gosh, that's good. Guys, go back, rewind that, listen to that again. Enjoy the lows as much as you enjoy the highs. It sounds crazy at first, but at the end of the day, I think all of us can look at when we get I mean, a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, I mean, even a year, a couple years down the road, and you look back at the hard seasons, the hard situations, the adversity that you faced. Those are the moments, those are the times that grew you. Those are the times that shaped you and molded you and refined you into the person, into the athlete that you are today. And so I think Ella brings great wisdom there of just enjoy the moments. It seems hard. It seems maybe impossible to get through right now, but I promise you you'll make it through. And I was reading a book the other day and it says sometimes the problems we're facing today are actually God's provisions for tomorrow. And so the things you're walking through now are maybe just preparing you for what you're going to face tomorrow or next week or next month or hey maybe it's even next year. And so I think there's just so much good in that of hey I think of battling your story again, battling through adversity, being where your feet are, enjoying the process, and learning to really rejoice in the trials because you understand that those shape you and they mold you and you're where you're at because of them today. And
Hmm.
so again, just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your story. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was happy I was able to sit down here and talk tonight.
Sweet. Well, 12-2 Nation, we will talk soon. See you next week. Be great.